the Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get your free financial survival toolkit and find out where to buy gold and silver safely at great prices. Sign up at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
1490 WGCH. This is Kerry Lutz. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network, which is brought to you by Miles Franklin. Been in business selling gold since 1980. Go to milesfranklin.com or call them at 800-822-8080 and get a free quote. This is Kerry Lutz, and it's time for another Triple Lutz Report. It's June 30th, 2012. This is episode 197. In case you hadn't heard, Obamacare is now the law of the land. Or is it? There's been a lot of debate about Chief Justice Roberts' majority opinion, which upheld the statute and its so-called individual mandate, which says that you must buy health care or you will be penalized, or, as Justice Roberts says, taxed. And if you don't know the difference between being taxed and penalized, join the club, because I sure as heck don't. Roberts said that while Congress used the Commerce Clause, which allows Congress to regulate interstate trade between the several states to justify imposing this penalty, they were effectively mandating or forcing people to engage in commerce that didn't already exist. Therefore, the Commerce Clause couldn't be used. However, he stated that Congress could use its taxing power, which we've all known for quite some time, and he has now affirmed is an unlimited power which can be used to deprive you of everything you have. And given the bent of Congress, eventually it will be used for that purpose. There's been great debate about whether this decision represents a whittling down of Congress's use of the Commerce Clause to impose all manners of social evils upon us, from gun regulations to agricultural controls to consumer product safety, OSHA, you name it. They use it. Interstate commerce has been interpreted by the court to cover virtually anything. For instance, if you grow tomatoes in your backyard and you wind up getting tomatoes, so therefore you're not going to the store to purchase the number of tomatoes that you grew, that's interstate commerce. You have affected interstate commerce. And I guess if you fast, if you decide not to eat for a couple of weeks while you're not buying food, that's having an effect on interstate commerce as well. So you can see how this power has been abused, much to the country's and our own personal detriment. In addition, Roberts struck down the requirement that states opt into Obamacare or risk losing vast amounts of current Medicaid dollars, another program that's furthering interstate commerce that the government has forced upon the states. So considering that the case that was brought by 26 states suing the federal government because of the requirement that the states vastly expand their Medicaid programs, pretty much you can see that there is no national health care in this bill any longer. There's no national health care. And so far as this bill attempted to impose it, dictatorially, I might add, that's gone. But what was Roberts thinking? Was he really just interested in rolling back the effect of the Commerce Clause and perhaps going to use that to strike down a number of programs in the future, a number of laws? And then he was granting states the opt-out. What was Roberts really thinking here? Was he really just interested in rolling back the Commerce Clause line of cases, granting states opt-out, and then putting it to Obama by making this issue front and center in the current presidential campaign? Romney purportedly raised over $4.6 million in the 24 hours immediately after the decision. But I'll tell you this, one thing is really certain. Repeal of this monstrosity is by no means guaranteed, whether the Republicans win or the Democrats. The Republicans took over the House in 2010 because of outrage over the passage of this law. And they have done absolutely nothing but rubber stamp Obama's suicidal deficits and spending money to implement Obamacare. They have not made any meaningful spending cuts, nothing. They could have stopped this law dead in its tracks by simply refusing to allocate any funds to implement it. It was their right. All spending bills must originate in the House of Representatives. But Speaker Boehner is a wimp. He is ineffective. I doubt his sincerity and his motives. I really doubt his honesty. He is a statist, and he has no idea what limited government is or what personal sovereignty is, and that it is embodied in the U.S. Constitution. So now the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the mandate is a tax, which of course Obama promised not to do. He promised not to increase taxes on the middle class, on people making under $250,000 a year. And everyone is upset about this law because it's so disruptive and destructive to healthcare. And now the fun begins. One thing you need to understand, the federal government through Medicare and Medicaid already account for over 50% of healthcare spending in the U.S. And it's been going up for decades anyway. So this is really just speeding up the current trends, what's been happening anyway since Medicare and Medicaid were passed in the 60s. It's basically been a 50-year government takeover of healthcare. And our system, our economic system, is going to have collapsed long before this law is ever fully felt. You know, if you listen to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, you've heard us say before, the economy is in a free fall, and there's really no stopping it. But what would happen if the government just said, no more, no mas, we're not paying for any health care again. There will be a 3-year phase out. We'll give you some money to buy insurance. You all are on your own. We'll cut back on the money 3 years after that. Well, it's a rare instance when a government agency shuts down, especially under past and present uber statists that have been running the country. But we do have a couple of examples. The CAB, or Civil Aeronautics Bureau, was eliminated, or the legislation was passed to eliminate it under Jimmy Carter, no less. And the Interstate Commerce Commission, the ICC, which was initially created to regulate the railroads and wound up controlling trucking and buses and a whole host of transportation concerns, that was eliminated too in the 80s. So the CAB, let's go back in a little bit of history here. The CAB is perhaps the more profound case because every aspect of the airline industry, with the exception of safety, was set by them. The fares you could charge, the routes you could fly, the food you served, hiring, baggage handling, you name it. So they got phased out. And what happened? What happened to the airline industry? Simple. They expanded more dramatically than any time in their past. New airlines formed, new routes, low fares, budget airlines. The food got a lot worse, I'll grant you that. And it's now to the point where it's virtually disappeared on a lot of flights. However, this unleashed an era where air travel became commonplace for all Americans. It greatly expanded the market. If you want to see an example of what deregulation can do, this is it. Obviously, we've had many airline bankruptcies since, largely due to inability to control costs because of union agreements. But overall, the flying public in many ways profited from it. The ICC, when it was disbanded, we still had commerce. We still had interstate commerce. Equipment on trains and buses and trucks has become safer and safer without an ICC. And the trucking industry greatly expanded. The railroads consolidated, became remarkably profitable, were able to improve their rolling stock and the infrastructure, bridges that would have never been rebuilt had the government still been regulating them. And you had this intermodal thing arise, which would have never happened, which was trucks parking containers on trains, hauling them cross country, then unloading them and trucks take them away. So a lot of innovations occurred that, but not for the U.S. government's refusal to keep regulating, would have never occurred. So what do you think would happen if the U.S. government got completely out of the business of regulating healthcare, paying for healthcare, health insurance, pricing, if they reformed the tort system to end defensive medicine? I'll tell you what would happen. The market would adapt. People would not be dying in the streets, and the quality and cost of treating the sick would decline dramatically. And so would government control over your life. The government created the healthcare crisis, and now, in the name of solving it, they're going to make it so much worse. The best solution is for Uncle Sam to do what he did in the case of the CAB and the ICC. Let the healthcare market work. Let the market work. Let the Walmart of healthcare emerge, and let the Neiman Marcus of healthcare emerge. And we're all going to be a heck of a lot better off. Two things I don't want to forget. First, if you want to hear this and other interviews, we do them continually throughout the week. Go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, sign up for the Financial Survival Toolkit, and get your free weekly newsletter. Also, we're going to be at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas from July 11th to July 14th. And we'd like to do a get-together, either a lunch or drinks and a happy hour with our listeners. So if you're interested in attending, send an email to me at kl@kerrylutz.com and we'll send you an invitation. Robert Ian's going to be there. We're going to have a lot of people that we interview regularly at this get-together. Can't give you all the names yet. I'm still waiting to see who's going to be able to attend. But we've got a lot of great people who would love to meet you. And if you're going to be in Vegas at Freedom Fest, again, send me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. I really want to meet as many of you as possible out there, so let me know. This is Kerry Lutz, been another Triple Lutz Report, signing off.